Rallyman! This is an awesome game. The first time I played this was at a gaming club quite a while back, and I was just itching to get my hands on a copy. It's one of those really, really addictive games. It's also a great solo game, which it's definitely going to get bonus points from me for that. Rallyman, I'm sure to nobody's surprise, is a game about racing cars in a rally. But what separates this game from every other racing game that I've ever played or heard of is that it's not the first player across the finish line that wins. This is a rally. The winner in Rallyman is the player that finishes the track or tracks in the shortest period of time. A player's overall time will be determined by these time cards that will be collected by players after they take each of their turns. At the end of the race, you'll add up your collected time cards to determine a winner, which is one of the many things that I love about this game, is the fact that a winner is not always clear until after the race is finished. So you're really going to have to sit down, you've got to focus on your decisions and really strive to get the most out of your car each turn to ensure that that victory is yours at the end of the game. And that's also why this is a great solo game, because you can try and beat your best time on a given track. This is a really well designed game. There's a lot I want to say about it, and I probably won't be able to cover all I want to say about it in this review, so let's jump right in. Let's have a look at Rallyman.
Rallyman is played on up to 4 double-sided modular boards, each with numerous track sections printed on them. One side has an asphalt surface and the other side has snow. Turn order works by each player taking their turns one after the other. However, just for the first few turns it works a tad differently so that players' cars will be spaced apart from each other on the track, as in a normal rally. Remember, it's a race to finish a track in the shortest period of time, not the first to cross the finish line. In your turn there are 2 methods of driving that you can choose from, a conservative style and a more aggressive style. Aggressive is faster but a little bit more risky. Conservative is safer but not as fast. We'll start off with conservative driving. To progress along the track in this game, you will use these custom dice. You will move a number of spaces on the track equal to the number of dice you choose to roll. So if you roll 3 dice, you'll move 3 spaces, 4 dice, a potential 4 spaces, and so on and so on. There are 7 of these custom dice. The black dice represent the gears of the car 1 through 5, and the 2 white dice are used to accelerate. The white dice can be used at any time to accelerate in the last engaged gear, which is your last played black dice. If you understand how to drive a manual vehicle, the rules governing the use of these dice are quite intuitive, because you'll have to change up through the gears to go faster, and down through the gears to go slower, which you will want to do around corners. When driving conservatively, you'll roll the dice one by one, and we found that it's best to lay out your gear combination on the board. If after you roll the die, the gear number is showing, you move up to that space. What you don't want to see upon the dice is the hazard symbols. If you get 3 of these symbols showing on the dice you roll, you will lose control of your car. Each die has at least 1 hazard symbol on it. However, when driving conservatively, there is a way of spending a little extra time to take precautions that will eliminate the risk of these hazard symbols when they pop up. It has to do with these second tokens, but I'll talk about how that works a little bit later on. Okay, let's move on to an example of conservative driving. Let's say I finished my previous turn in 3rd gear. In my next turn I can stay in the same gear by rolling the 3rd gear dice, and/or I can change up or down through the gears as I see fit in any combination I like. But I can't skip a gear, and I can only use each of the dice once per turn. So here I'll give you an example. I could use the 3rd gear dice, 4th, accelerate dice to stay in 4th gear, and then the 5th gear dice, changing up through the gears. If I don't roll 3 hazard symbols, I will move a total of 5 spaces because I rolled 5 dice. After taking my turn, I take a time card from the decks of cards beside the board. Each of these decks represents one of the gears. The time card that I take will correspond to the last gear dice that I rolled. So in this case, I finished in 5th, I take a 5th gear card and add it to my collection of time cards. Let's look at another combination of the many dice combinations I could have chosen. Let's see what happens if I had have changed down through the gears instead of up like previously. Okay, I start in 3rd again. I use the 3rd gear dice, the 2nd gear dice, the accelerate dice to stay in 2nd gear, the accelerate dice again to stay in 2nd gear, and then the 1st gear dice. To again move a potential of 5 spaces, the same amount as in the previous example. However, in this example, I'd finish my turn in 1st gear instead, not 5th. So I take a time card from the 1st gear pile of cards beside the board. Now, what is the difference between ending my turn in first gear or fifth gear if in both examples I moved 5 spaces? Well, that's easy. Time. How far you move along the track in Rallyman is not always as important as what gear you finish your turn in. Finding a sort of happy medium between the two is a key in getting ahead in this game. You see, the gear cards you collect after each turn have a time printed on them. All 5th gear cards are worth only 10 seconds, whilst all 1st gear cards are worth 50 seconds. As you collect these cards after each of your turns, they accumulate to eventually form your total time for that track. The winner of the game is the player at the end of the track or tracks with the lowest time after tallying their collected time cards. The time card that you collect also acts as a reminder for what gear you will start your next turn in. Okay, let's move on to the aggressive style of driving. To drive aggressively, the dice work in the same manner as driving conservatively in regards to having to change up and down through the gears and moving as many spaces as dice you choose to roll, etc. Although, by using this method, you roll your chosen dice simultaneously, not one by one. This eliminates that option I mentioned earlier of using these second tokens to avoid hazard symbols if they show up. The bonus though to aggressive driving is that this method is quicker time-wise, because for each die you roll using this method, you take a -1 second token from the stock. For each of these -1 second tokens that you've collected, they're worth -1 second to your accumulated time. These second tokens are also what can be spent in order to ignore a hazard icon when driving conservatively. So there is a choice. Do I hold on to them to reduce my total time, or do I spend a few seconds to have more control over the dice when I drive conservatively? And it's a tough choice. It will depend on your strategy and your driving style. Remember this though, you roll the dice one by one when driving conservatively. So you won't have to spend these tokens until 2 hazard symbols show up. Then you can choose to use them to preempt and ignore the third from showing up. Let's say that I did roll 3 hazard symbols in my turn at some point. This means I lose control of the vehicle. I still then take a time card as normal after my turn, however I flip it over and add it to my time pile. As you can see, on the opposite side of every card, it has a time of 1 minute, which is bad in itself because it's slowed me up. But not only that, I'm going to have to start my next turn in neutral, indicated by the 0 on the card. This card will also tell me how I lost control of my vehicle. I might just spin out, which isn't so bad, or I might go off the track. If I do go off the track, I might take damage depending on the surroundings of the space I wiped out in. If I do take damage, it's going to limit the number of black gear dice I am permitted to roll in future turns, which obviously limits the productivity of my car. Now before the game starts, your co-driver has gone ahead and mapped out the best gear to approach corners and bends on every track. So, on the board, there are speed limits printed. This is where changing down gears to slow up is a necessary evil. You might have to finish your turn in a lower gear, taking a longer time card, in order to progress around the corner safely. There are 2 speed limits printed, which you must be in that gear or below that gear to take the corner safely. To take the inner one, you will use only 1 space of movement, but in a lower gear. To take the outer one is drifting. It will see you have to move more spaces through the corner, but the bonus to drifting is that you will come out of the corner in a higher gear, which obviously can reduce the time card you might take at the end of your turn. Again, which one's going to be more important? Moving more spaces or taking less time? And that is going to depend on your decisions earlier.
So you've got to keep those 2 things in perspective at all times. Moving fewer spaces means more turns to finish a track, which in turn equals a higher quantity of time cards at the end. Less spaces each turn may mean taking less time cards, but probably of higher time values. So there's sort of a balancing act between time and space, and it's interesting how that works, and I really, really like that. The thing I love most about this game though is the choices. Rallyman is quite a simple game in terms of complexity, but it doesn't limit the choices offered to you. There is quite a bit to take into consideration. Planning and setting yourself up for a turn or 2 ahead is a really good idea. Think about what space you want to end on and in which gear to approach the next part of the track in the best possible way. Also take your surroundings into consideration. If you're going to push your luck, some surroundings will give you damage if you go off the track and others won't. If I'm going to roll all 7 dice whilst using the time attack or aggressive method, I will usually only do it where my surroundings won't give me damage. Now in regards to the dice and luck, luck in Rallyman only plays as big a part as you allow it to. It's only ever your choice to push your luck. If you roll all 7 dice aggressively and wipe out, you knew that was a risky move. You got no one to blame but yourself. I will say in Rallyman I live life a little bit on the wild side. I'm rarely seen rolling 5 dice conservatively. I like to push it just a little bit beyond what is safe, so I know from experience that even wiping out in this game is a lot of fun. There is some really fun decision making in this game, and that's one of the reasons I love it so much. But there is more to this game. There is the option of choosing your tyres, which has an effect on the driving capabilities of the car. Some tracks also have shortcuts, which if you take the shortcut, may see you get a flat tyre or put mud on the track, making it harder for other opponents to pass. There is also bumps on some tracks, which can launch your car, and that can be great or totally destructive depending on what speed you choose to hit them at. There is a pad included in the box to keep tabs on playing multiple tracks in one sitting, which is great, and it is the way that the game is intended to be played. There is also a variant, and I love this one, where you get to set up checkpoints, at which point, when players pass them, they will count up their time cards and reveal their time, so at certain points throughout the game you'll know how you're doing in comparison to the other players, and that might see you change your driving style for future turns. The 4 boards included can also be offset to each other to make endless variety of track, long, short, windy, snowy, dry, or both. It's just a really well designed game. A lot of thought has been put into the design of this game. Overall, I just love this game. The overall package is great. The rulebook's clear with examples, the components are nice, the cards, they're quite thin. I'd normally sleeve cards this thin, but they're not handled a lot in this game. They're really only taken from one pile and put on another. So I'm not sure I will sleeve these ones. I don't know whether there's really a need. The box's insert has a place for everything, which is always a big bonus. The second tokens are stackable. The mini cars they're just cool. Come on, they're awesome. There's a lot of things going for this game. Solo play, as I said, is a big thumbs up. I just love the feeling. I love the feeling of changing up and down through the gears with the dice, swinging the arse end of the car out as you drift around a corner, and I really, really like the fact that the spaces depict that on the board, you know, that the car actually does that on the board. There's a lot of little touches like that in this game that they all add up to make it just a really fun game. It's awesome. Thanks for watching another episode of Castelli Reviews, everyone, and I'll see you all again soon.